Well, good morning, everyone. Good morning and welcome. My name is Monica Spears, and I'm president of the Board of Directors for the Association of Development Officers. Welcome to Meet the Funders. We're so proud to present this special event in partnership with the grant professionals of the Lower Hudson Valley. Many of you who are here today as members of either ADO or GPLH, as the grant professionals of the Lower Hudson Valley is affectionately known. You may not be familiar with one or the other, so I'll give you a little primer. ADO provides educational programs and peer groups that help fundraising professionals diversify their organization's income and build long-term sustainability. And we serve as a community where business and nonprofit leaders connect and collaborate. GPLH is a member organization that provides educational opportunities for grant specialists. They promote high ethical grant writing standards, and they raise awareness of philanthropy and charitable giving. And I'm proud to also be a GPLH member. I encourage you to learn more about either of the two organizations. You can visit us online, or better yet, we have tables set up outside, so stop by and learn a little bit more about each. We want to thank the GPLH and ADO program sponsors for their incredible support of our organizations. And we can't do this important work that we do without them. So thank you very much. And thank you today for Corporate AV. For working on this event with us. They work with us on all of the ADO events, so we're very grateful to them. Thank you, thank you. And also thank you to our host, Wrexham. We're here in this beautiful building. They're hosting us today, so we thank them as well. And now it's my pleasure to introduce Deborah Brown, who's co-president of GPLH and founder of Deborah Brown Consulting. She will be our moderator today. So, Deborah, please.
Thank you, Monica. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
So I would like to ask any board members from ADO and GPLH to stand so we can say hello and thank you. Lovely. We want to thank you for all your hard work, and we want to thank our panelists for coming here today to help us. And on to the main event. So our goal today is to strengthen the grant writing capacity of applicants so that funders get what they need and applicants get what they need. And our plan is that I'm going to ask questions until about 10. I hate to do this to you, but we're going to keep it short, about 2 minutes per question, and or answer, I should say. And then we'll stop at 10, and there'll be about 15 minutes Q&A for everyone. And then we'll stop everything at about 10:15 so that you can all talk together. With that, when I first ask you a question, panelists, I'm going to ask you if you could just introduce yourself to the audience and say your name, your organization, and your title, and what you fund, what your interests are. Thank you. Okay, so before we got started, we actually asked our funders what their interests were in terms of our list of questions, so I'm going to be directing questions. This one is for Lauren and for Sean. So Lauren, first, can you give us an example of a successful grant proposal and why it stood out from others? And at the same time, can you tell us what you don't like and what your pet peeves are, what you don't like to see? So what stands out as great and what's not so great?
Sure. Good morning. My name is Lauren Perkins. I'm a program director at the Westchester office of the New York Community Trust, formerly known as the Westchester Community Foundation. In my grant-making areas include youth development, early childhood education, health, social services, and technical assistance. And our foundation also funds in the areas of the environment and arts and culture. and community development. So in terms of a successful proposal, so this might sound really, really fundamental, but we rejoice when proposals are clearly written and respond to our proposals and our proposal instructions. So at the Trust, we don't require a particular template for our proposals, but we do want to see a couple key things. The first is a description of the problem or the system or the policy that your project is addressing. The second is a clear link to our funding areas. And the third are your goals, activities, outcomes, and how you'll measure success. But what really makes a successful proposal stand out is when those things are clearly connected. So we as a funder want to see the relationship between your activities and your outcomes and your goals. Even a strong project, if the proposal is hard to follow, won't stand out and won't be successful. But easier said than done, right? So a couple things that stand out for successful proposals and ideas around how to make your proposal clear and easy to follow. The first is use structure in the proposal to your advantage. So we like to see headings and bullets and clear sections of the proposal. It really helps us understand your ideas easier. And then another thing to do is to keep your language really clear and direct. Avoid jargon, avoid lofty language. We know that it's often harder to write something in one paragraph than it is in three, but plain language can be really powerful to convey your ideas. So on the pet peeve side, I'll sort of preface this by saying that when we fund a project, we really want it to succeed. And a key thing in making sure that a grant-funded project succeeds is clear and open communication between the funder and the grantee. So a pet peeve is keeping us in the dark about major changes during a grant period. So things can change, and we completely understand that. Leadership transitions, things that might impact the timeline of a proposal, the implementation of a project. And we want to support you through changes that might have to happen, adjustments that might have to happen over the course of the grant period, reporting timelines, the budget, et cetera. But we can only do that if we are kept aware of what's happening. So don't keep us in the dark. The second pet peeve is, similarly, like on reports, the deliverables that we agree upon during their proposal review are included in an award letter, which we consider a binding contract. And I'm accountable for reporting on those deliverables. And so if they don't show up in a final report, if they're sort of missing, I'm going to have to follow up, and it just creates a lot of work for the funder and the grantee partner. So the key thing is just open and honest communication that can help develop trust over the course of a grant period.
Thank you so much, Lauren. That's really helpful. And Sean, what do you have to say about?
Hi, Sean Van Dyke, Manager of Community Engagement with New York Presbyterian, overseeing the enterprise. And so what we fund it's pretty broad. It's health and wellness topics. I mean, we keep it broad intentionally because there's different priorities within the hospital that change given the year. For me, what things that are a successful proposal are ones that, much to like what Lauren said, but ones that are like direct, clear language, organized, and focused. Those tend to usually stand out. You know what you want to do, how you're going to do it, and all those things help a proposal be successful. Again, much like Lauren said, the jargon is one of the things that we don't typically like to see. Just knowing exactly how you want to, what the message is that you're trying to convey. Staying within yourself, keeping that sense of who your organization is, but being upfront and direct, answering the questions directly will go a long way. I've seen ones where they bury the answer to the question way down at the bottom of the question. They like to include a lot of what I like to call fluff. There's so much passion that comes out, and you tend to throw the kitchen sink into every answer, but it doesn't get to the bottom. And so, like Lauren, I'm responsible for reporting this out to my senior leaders, and if I have to find the answer, it gets a little complicated. So, answering the question up front and then going into, all that stuff that conveys your passion goes a long way. And so for me, some of my pet peeves are, we do usually tend to have a template. If, organizations that ignore the template and send on their own letterhead. That, for me, that's a pet peeve of mine. Unsolicited photos and testimonials. I mean, again, that's not for everyone. It's just, it does more, it could potentially do more harm than good. So I tend to advise people to stay away from it. But those are some of my pet peeves.
Thank you. So the next question is directed to Gabby, and then Sean, and then Lauren. So what are the strongest and weakest parts of the proposals that you see?
You know, what the metrics are that are going to come out at the end of it, that really helps us to kind of formulate an opinion, to be able to decision those. You know, you see the excitement, you see the engagement, you see like the follow-up, as many attachments as possible, because they're like, oh, wait a minute, there's another pie chart I could put in here, or there's a attachment I can put in. I tend to see, you know, those, whereas there are some, kind of like what Sean said, you have some that are like, we're gonna try, and we're gonna throw a lot of words in there, and again, it's like the kitchen sink effect, and hope, you know, kind of hope for the best. I would say the weakest, organizations do not enjoy telling us who their largest donors are, and we are not in any way using that. I want to clear this up now. Not using this for business development or anything like that, but it really does help us in the end to look at, you know, who your donor list is, who you're engaging with, who, you know, in reference to who the some of the largest donors are they donating to this project or to your program or to your organization as a whole? And if so, you know, do some of these make sense to maybe we have a larger conversation of, do we turf some of these donors funds and look at, okay, this program that you were trying to formulate, XYZ organization or donor or personal, you know, philanthropy could absolutely, you know, blow this out of the water for you guys in partnership with M&T Bank. So just really, that is something I tend to see as one of the weakest things is wanting to list out who largest donors and in some cases board members.
Thank you. Sean?
Yep. So the strongest part usually tends to be organization description or their mission statement. But almost, I would also say that that can also be a detriment. Again, organizations like to express exactly like who they are and throw everything in there. Start off the question or the answer with since 1947. I mean, that's all well and great, but really what we want to see is something direct and succinct. Brief. What it is that your organization does. But usually organizations tend to answer that question pretty well as project or program description. Organizations do a good job at detailing what their program or project is going to do. Usually the weakest I find is, it's a tough one, but it's the evaluation question. A lot of organizations tend to harp on outcomes or outputs instead of outcomes. We want to see how your program is making a difference. So saying things like we reach 500 people at health fair, well, that's great, but what was the exact change? What changed? What was the difference that was made by having that event? So detailing that, is usually something that organizations struggle with. Also, there's not a lot of detail in the sustainability question. We want to see what happens after the funding. How will this program continue after the funding is done? What do you have in place? What type of outreach or other activities will you do to continue the program or, the organization as a whole? Also, some things that we've seen is, the budget. Detailing an accurate account of your budget. Sometimes our legal department is very much a stickler for the budget, and it needs to be exactly down to the penny. And I kid you not, I've had to go back and write why aren't they, their budget was $47,000, but they're requesting $50,000. I mean, to me, that makes sense. I mean, obviously you would request $50,000, but, budget needs to be as detailed as possible. So, yeah.
Thank you. And Lauren?
Sure. So two characteristics that come to mind within strong proposals. The first are proposals that demonstrate organizational capacity. So something that we're looking for is evidence that your organization has the people, the systems, and the experience to deliver on the grant-funded work that you're proposing. So we might look for this in a couple different places. The first is like your leadership and staff. Who's involved in your board? Who's on your staff? What experience, expertise do they bring? What's your evidence of preparation, your track record of success for implementing this type of work that you're proposing? We will look at the 990s, especially with a new grantee, to ascertain your financial stability, your governance. We might also look at beyond the four corners of a proposal, your website, any other sorts of external publications, just to understand sort of how you're communicating what you do to the public. And then when you're working with historically underrepresented communities, we also look to see that those most affected by the work that you're proposing are represented in helping to inform, design, or even lead the work that you're doing. Another thing around strong proposals, if you're collaborating with other organizations, lift up those partnerships and point to them in your proposals. We really value strong and interconnected ecosystems because we think that can amplify the impact of what you're proposing. A couple characteristics of weaker proposals: a lack of local relevance. So the trust as a place-based funder, we care about supporting work here in Westchester. So proposals that make broad or global cases for work but that don't seem really rooted in the practical application here in these communities in Westchester won't resonate. This often arises when a project's been successful elsewhere and is going to be piloted here locally. And then the second sort of aspect of weak proposals that we see are aspirational proposals in general that don't address the where, what, when, why, how of a project. So a lot of the work that are in proposals that are submitted to us, it's new, and so I want to be able to picture in my mind sort of what it looks like in implementation, so proposals should paint that picture pretty clearly.
Thank you. So the next question is on relationship building, and it is for Kara, Joanne, and then Lauren. What are key aspects of the relationship you expect to have with the organizations you fund? What are good ways to build a relationship with a funder before and after funding? Kara.
Hi, I'm Kara McLoughlin. Many of you know me from my former role as Executive Director of the Patrina Foundation. That organization funded girls and women's social and educational programs. Last May, I took over as president of the Thomas and Agnes Carvel Foundation, and I guess you all want me to lift the hood a little bit, because it's been a little secretive, I know. So the relationship question is a great one. Most of the funding to date has been based on close personal relationships with either boards, executive directors, the people being served, or everything in between, staff members, et cetera. We're trying to codify that a little bit. There are 2 relatively new board members on the organization. They started a year ago. I'm in month 5, so a lot of new things coming, but it can start with an email. Yes, we have emails now. I do not want to see any little pieces of paper in my mailbox anymore. I want them in my email. It's kmclaughlin@tacarvelfoundation.org. Yay. Stay tuned. We will have a website. So where does that lead? How to build the relationships? I'm starting with a very robust list of grant partners. Majority of them are here in Westchester. We have several in New York City, some in New Jersey, some on Long Island. But it's basically the footprint of where Carvel stores are or were. Thomas Carvel was a very big personality. Everyone can hear his voice in their head from the commercials. when I sat down at the desk for the first time, there's a picture of him staring at me. I moved that picture. Anyway, so how do I want to build these relationships? I'm finding that people expected things a certain way because that's the way it had been done for the last 15 years. We're changing that. We're changing the process. We're changing what we're expecting. We're even changing the mission a little bit. We were very broad, and pretty much any organization could bend themselves to look like they were part of our mission. Our goal is to hone that. I'm still a work in process, but it's going to be around the whole child. And under that will be 4 pillars: necessities, and that includes family, food, clothing, shelter, and all the supports around that. Then health, and that's a very broad one: physical, mental, spiritual, and then both, again, back to the family supports around that. We do fund a lot of organizations working with children with differently abled. And then education, again, the goal is we want the whole child to be smart and educated and successful in whatever they decide. And then lastly, it's sort of the icing or helping that child make the connection. And how do we build those connections? Through arts, through STEM, through community building, through making them that whole person to be part of a whole community, to be a part of the whole society. So, how do we build those relationships? Well, be patient, first of all. I had a few people who were like, I submitted the letter, and I was like, oh, sorry. And I found it was in a file. So please be patient. I have an email address now. Reach out. If I don't get back to you, I'm really sorry, but I will. And I do answer my phone every so often, but I want to come see the work. I want to meet the people you're serving. I want to meet the people doing the amazing, amazing work. And be honest with me, and I'll be honest with you. What Lauren was saying earlier, like, keep us in the loop. If there are changes being made, how can we help? Tell us how we can better serve you, and then so you can better serve the people you're working with. Thank you. Sorry, that was more than 2 minutes.
Well, we needed to hear it, so
But
thank
you
you
wanted
very
it.
much. Yes, absolutely. Joanne, you're next.
Hi, I'm Joanne Stewart. I'm here because I'm Secretary of the Board of Directors for Phelps Community Foundation. I know many of you probably know me just from my grant writing role, because I'm also a grant writing consultant and past president of GPLH. But the mission of Phelps Community Foundation, first of all, it's independent from Phelps. Since January 2020, it's completely independent. Our mission is to support those organizations that serve the health and wellness of Westchester and Rockland residents. We are by invitation only. However, we really are looking for transformation to be able to strengthen existing programs or services or new programs. While we are invitation only, I'm here to let you know about us because we recently, in the past year, put out a website, which I was very much involved with. And being a grant writer, I really tried to help the board make sure that a lot of the information you want to see is on there. So I really think the majority of the questions you might have will be on the website, so I encourage you to look at it. There is a way for you to get to know us, because we do want to make relationships with our funders and with people that we're going to fund, and that is through an LOI form. It's very short. We made sure it's not going to be cumbersome. I think the project description is 500 words. That's the way to get to know us, because we have, with Vincent DeSantis is our president, and he works with another person to go through all the LOIs, and then we meet on certain times of the year. We have 2 grant cycles, in spring and fall, and then he'll come to the board with recommendations as to who we want to invite to submit a proposal. Then the organization submits the proposal. If it moves on to the next stage, we have a 1-hour virtual interview with them, and then the decision's made. So that's the best way in terms of a relationship to get to know us, but please read the guidelines. I mean, I'm a grant writer. I know. I've been there, but read the guidelines. Don't apply unless you really see that you have a project or a mission that fits. And we want to stay, involved with you. We want to hear about things. I think the way to do it is through, if you are to become a grantee, to send us the newsletters, send us, an email, but let us know, especially if something changed that impacts your proposal, like Lauren and Kara was saying. If you have a change in leadership on the project, or something's changed, or you weren't able to start something because it got delayed, you didn't hire the person yet, those are the things as a grantee we want to know. We don't want to find that out on a report. And similarly on my grant writing role, I would always be telling our funders that too. I don't want to have to put that in a report to first give them that notice. So that's, for us, the best way to get to know us. But we do give really nice grants, and I encourage, if you do have something that fits the mission, to submit the LOI form.
Thank you. Lauren? Yeah, and to echo what you just mentioned, Joanne, so similar, take a look at our website and our grant-making priorities, as well as the proposal instructions. And if you feel like you can make a persuasive case that your project connects to both, and you are ready to submit a proposal, please, we welcome you to do so. That's a wonderful way to establish a line of communication with us, and so that we can start to learn about your work. And if we're not able to fund something that's really promising in one given round, we might circle back, down the line. So it's just a wonderful way to establish that line of communication. And similarly with what Kara was saying, during a grant period, site visits are really valuable. We want to see their work in action. Whenever you feel like it's appropriate for us to sort of casually, be a participant observer in the background, please invite us so that we can really see what it is that you're doing. And then this idea of, making sure that there are open lines of communication, throughout the whole process. So mutual responsiveness and openness to reflect together what's working, what's not working. Developing, those open lines of communication can create trust that can make a really lasting and meaningful funder-grantee relationship over time.
Thank you. So the next question is about repeat grantees. And this one is for Lauren, for Kara, and for Joanne. How much, and although if either Gabby or Sean feel like you must jump in, then jump in, okay? How much should the narrative change if the program is basically the same year to year? What are you looking to see with your repeat grantees, and what annoys you?
You should have let all of us answer this one.
So at the New York Community Trust, our grant making is project focused, so we're not a long-term funder, but we do entertain renewal proposals. I mean, I'm less focused on what is repeated from proposal to proposal, so long as a renewal proposal reflects on what was learned from an original grant, right? So we want to see how you are taking what was originally funded and building from that, expanding it, replicating it. That's the most important thing, I think, in a renewal proposal for us to see. We recognize that, we do a lot of investment in systemic change and policy change, and we recognize that work takes time. So yes, we will certainly read and make renewal grants, but we definitely want to see what are you taking from the original grant into the next stage of the work.
Kara.
So we have 5 very active board members, and they sponsor/champion the grant relationship. And each one of them will give you a different answer to this question. So again, trying to systematize things a little bit. I think if we're in year 4 or 5 and we've had grant partners for 15 years or more. So we're in it for the long haul. So show us how the funding we've given you in the past will be the foundation for what's coming. I think that's the easiest way to do that. And yes, you can have your standard one-pager about the organization. Don't write a new one for us. Just include that. I know someone said no pictures or testimonials. We like those because that's the proof. We want the data, but we also want the stories. So I know that was another question that I'm jumping ahead, I think. Finding that balance. You know, this is a private foundation. It was started by a family. There were no family members on the board. They were all professionals, but they all had some kind of winding road back to the Carvel family. And they want to honor that legacy. But, so they want to know the stories. I mean, Tom Carvel was the storyteller. And can you believe I don't get free ice cream?
So Wednesday is not Sunday.
Wednesday is not Sunday. So I'm going, that's a whole other thing. I was at one site visit and I was talking to a group of girls who went to the school we were funding. And she said, one of the girls said, "You work at the Carvel Foundation?" "I work at Carvel. I'm the one in Tuckahoe." And I said, "Do you get free ice cream?" She said, "Of course, don't you?" I know, right? Wah, 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 wah. The other girls were like, "She gets us free ice cream." Anyway, so yes, always build on what we've done in the past with you. And if things didn't go okay, that's okay too. Show us what you learned. Show us why you made the changes you're making. And it could have been something as simple as somebody left and somebody new came in and had a slightly different way to do something, and yay, it worked out better. But yeah, we're open, we're here to support you, not the other way around. Unless you can get me free ice cream.
So Joanne, you're next, but I do think, I can tell Gabby's dying to answer this question, so Gabby, if you want to.
What, of course. One of the things I would say is we used to have a feature on our application that was a duplication feature. And I would watch, I've been with the bank for 10 years, and I would see each year the same applications come back, and I'm like, So then I started taking like trips to go see the organizations, show me what's, from our, funds, what has come of this and what, where are we going? What does the future look like? And I had more people admit it's just kind of part of, we start a new year, we fill out the application, we would go in and and that was both our bad and theirs, because we were just in a sense of repeated this, okay, great, we funded this organization for X amount of years, so-and-so is involved, as an internal champion, and we're taking everything at face value. And it really took us kind of like, does this make sense? To really walk it through each of our organizations, and what it led to was changing our application completely. This year was the first year of going through a brand new application, and creating 2 applications. And that was something that we very quickly saw a reduction in some cases of organizations that applied. And then in some cases it was brand new programs. And that was something that I thought was so interesting to see, was that duplication.
I would love to talk to you about this later.
Okay. Thank you. Joanne,
Hi, okay, well, as I said before, we try to make transformational grants. However, we have given grants to the same organization more than once, but it really needed to be an expansion of that program that we were funding, whether that's geography or population or a new service or completely different project. If it's gonna be exactly the same program, exactly the same way, the answer is probably gonna be no, because they're still looking for transformation. And we also make it really clear that, for instance, if you're gonna ask us to fund a new position like a case manager for a healthcare service, that you have a plan to how are you gonna sustain that when the funding's gone. And I know that question, but show at least where you're gonna apply. I mean, is it Mother Cabrini? Is it OCFS? I mean, what is your plan? Because we are not gonna fund the same thing over and over. That's just not what we do. The other thing I did not mention is that we do not fund hospitals. Article 28 hospitals, it's in our bylaws, we don't fund it, so I can't help you with that. So that's the thing. And in terms of past grantees, in terms of how to apply, I mean, I would do it again through the LOI. You could certainly have a conversation with me if you're a past grantee and I'm thinking about something new, you know, a new request, new thing. But we don't want anybody applying unless their reporting is up to date either. So, you know, that has to get done, and we have to have the conversations about the reports before we would consider a new application.
Thank you. Sean, did you want to add to this conversation, or should we just move on to the next door?
I'll just add that just that impact, you know, like annual reports definitely go a long way. At New York Presbyterian, most of our grants are multi-year grants, and so at the end of every year, we ask just for a summary of what happened that past year. We do recognize that things change. A big question or a key question for us are lessons learned, and just how that has been applied. It's okay if things went awry, didn't go as expected, but as long as you accounted for that or learned from it and have a plan for how you will correct or how your program or project will pivot. Those are some of the key things for us. In terms of renewal after the grant period, we're definitely open to that. I've met with grantees saying that we don't automatically give a grant just because you once received it, but you almost have a leg up because you know our organization, you know how we tend to work, and you can speak to the progress that you've made. So speaking to the outcomes that you've witnessed, and if you've identified a new need that has emerged in your project, you know, that gives you a definite leg up. So just being able to speak to what you've observed during the grant cycle will definitely help and go a long way.
Thank you. So, speaking of outcomes, the next question is about outcomes. And this one is for Lauren, Joanne, and Gabby. And the questions are, how do we do on presenting measurable objectives and zeroing in on ways to measure impact? How can we do a better job answering these questions? What is the best way to present this information?
Sure, so at the Trust, we're not really looking for like one formula to measure success. We sort of see it as an art and a science, but what matters are basically two things: that you can describe, number one, what success looks like for your project, and number two, that you have a credible way or plan to know when you're achieving it. So what changed? Are people's lives improved? And we recognize that different projects will measure progress in different ways, and that's expected. Not every organization has a data team or resources to engage in an external evaluator, but what's important is that you have a practical approach to collect information about your project. So depending on the context, that could look really different, and that's fine. So it could be a matter of collecting quantitative data. It could be a pre and post survey for participants. It could be actually counting the number of resources that are distributed in a community. And for advocacy and policy efforts, it could be sort of understanding what are those key benchmarks along the way that show that your work is gaining traction. But a key thing that we look at as a funder is that
we like to think of evaluation as a learning and self-reflective process, not just a matter of checking the box on the proposal or checking the box on the report. So the strongest proposals describe not only how they'll measure success, but what they will do with what they learn from that measurement over time. So when a report says we learned that, as mentioned already on the panel, like when a report says we learned this and this is how we pivoted and this is what we did in response, we love to see that. It builds trust and it just is a really strong aspect of proposals.
Thank you. Joanne?
Yeah, I mean, with us, it's really about, making the outcome smart. What the SMART is, the specific, measurable, actionable, with time bound. And knowing how it would improve the beneficiaries, the client's life. Number of sessions, counseling sessions that's an output, that's not an outcome. But we want to know how it changed the lives of the people that you support. That's what's important to us. So, when I see proposals that talk about social emotional skills and, we're going to reduce anxiety and stress, but then I don't see any method of how they're going to evaluate that, I have to wonder, how are you going to know that? How are you going to know that? And that's a tough one to measure, but at least show that you have an idea, that it's, pre and post surveys, there are outside services that measure social emotional skills, those kinds of things. You can't just say we're going to do it. You have to show that you're going to do it and show that you did it in a report. So those kinds of measurements are important. I like testimonials. We like to hear how it might have impacted someone's life. I mean, we're talking about health and wellness, so we really want to know how it improved those people's lives. It's important to us.
Thank you. Gabby?
Yes. I would second definitely a few points that Joanne had made with showing us, if something that we are doing and something that MNT is supporting is a actual tangible item and not necessarily a program or the beginning of a cohort or healthcare related, show us that tangible thing. Did we help create an ADA compliant playground? Did we help to create, a gym, a science area, a STEM area or STEAM area that, didn't exist before? Did we assist in showing a full second, ability for organizations to have, whether it's a wraparound program or summer program, and that didn't take away from mom and dad being able to make it to work, that didn't take away, that didn't deal necessarily in childcare shortages or anything like that. Like, show us those numbers, show us how that worked. And, again, we love the photos, the testimonials. What I will say is some of the things for us in evaluation is just the continued conversation of, we've made it to this step. Now, what is our next? And we want to see, what that next step could potentially be. So, and if the first step didn't work, why? And how are we maybe able to pivot, where those funds were, and is this going to be something that we're going to try again a second year? Is this something we are going to then say, you know what, there are changes that need to be made to this, and we're going to do it together, or we're going to work with, we're going to have the ability for, a different grouping of, let's say, financial literacy, or a different grouping of individuals that are able to come in and meet with students, employees, parents on college training or college savings, or you have your first paycheck. How does that look? Those are our evaluations and our deliverables and the metrics at the end of the day. The metrics that we get to see, with an organization as they come back potentially for another round, or they are just that excited that they do want to share with us, like, hey, we kicked off this program, and because of M&T's funding, this happened, and this many students or individuals' lives in these economic areas were impacted in a positive, or in some cases a negative, and again, we pivot, so.
Great, thank you. So the next question is shifts in government funding. This is for Sean and for Kara and for you, Gabby. How has your philanthropy been impacted by the changing federal grants landscape? Has it changed your giving philosophy at all? Sean?
So, generally speaking, what we're seeing is more applicants for our grants. So, competition is tougher. And so, what that means is we're less likely to take a risk, per se. So, I say that in relation to what we just talked about in evaluation and reporting, that is that evaluation has to be strong. You know, we have to see that you have a clear plan for how you're going to measure impact. You know, we want to make sure our investment is going to, you know, be successful. We want you to be successful, but, you know, we want to see that you have a clear plan. So that's not to say that we won't fund anything that's, you know, untested or anything, but just that you are structured in a way, you know, you have the qualifications, the sustainability to carry out your program, because, you know, there's more and more organizations that are applying to our grants. Every year, our grants have received like at least 50 new applicants, and that's only going to continue to grow. So having a strong, organized, clear proposal is more important than ever.
Thank you. Kara?
Yes to everything Sean said, and I'll look at it from more of a more tactical standpoint. The funding we do usually augments the government funding. It's things they won't cover. So I don't think we'll be changing that aspect, but we're realizing that things that the government was funding won't be. So more will be creeping into that. I'm not saying pad the budgets for us, but I'm saying we'll understand that you're going to have to include the time of personnel all the way up into what the budget looks like, and understanding that it's not just the one physical outcome that you used to apply to us for. Having said that, I think the board's going to shift to the smaller organizations. What does that mean? I don't know yet. We fund mostly smaller, but every so often there's a $75 million organization that appears, and we fund them. And I think we'll be doing less of those and more of the 5 million and less. Again, don't quote me on that. We're still working that, but I think that's where we realize that our 25 to 50,000 is making a lot more impact.
Thank you, and I see that a number of panelists have been interested in this question, so Gabby, and then Joanne, and then Lauren, if you want to jump in, certainly.
I would definitely mirror what both Kara and Sean said. We very much realize the changes in what the government is supporting or not supporting has created a huge hole for our not-for-profit partners. We know that very much like what Sean mentioned, there has been such an uptick in the amount of applications that we have seen come through. We will remain a partner. We know we will never be able to give the same level of funding that the government funding has provided for not-for-profits. We, you know, each region, you know, we've had an increase in applications. We've had the same budget for 5 years. So, you know, those things for us haven't changed of what we have to give in each of the regions. So on that side of things, we really do want to have those conversations of this was previously funded, now we don't have the funding, what does that look like? One of the things I will always encourage is internal sponsors, somebody to champion along your organization, your application, because that is something that we've given you a little bit of a stamp to say, we've had this conversation, we know what our next steps are, we know that we have somebody that can then turn around and speak to that. That's something that we've really, you know, we've definitely seen more of, especially with the change in the government funding. For us, you know, we we don't fund positions, so we can't pay a salary out of the foundation. So that's something too where we've seen an influx of, we have this position, we have this, and immediately for us, unfortunately, we're not able to fund that. But can we look at the program? Can we look at, what that is and have the conversation? So that will be something I will always say. The internal sponsor is something that you want to ensure that you have, and whether it's a branch manager to a relationship manager, myself, whomever, have those conversations.
Thank you. Joanne?
Yeah, I wanted to mention that although we're, by invitation only, we've had a lot of discussions about a lot of this, and frankly, in the past 2 years, we've given unrequested blanket we call them mini grants, because they're a little smaller, to food pantries and to food banks, and we also gave blanket mini grants to emergency medical services. And in addition, we've raised the cap. You'll see the information on the cap on the website, but we've raised the maximum amount any one grantee can receive at one time. So we've responded in those kinds of ways. I just wanted to let you know that.
Thank you. And Lauren, do you have anything to add?
No, just to underscore what's already mentioned, just to take a bigger step back, we see that there's tremendous uncertainty and strain in the sector. We also see a tremendous amount of courage, and we know that all of that will continue, just to sort of acknowledge that. I think that for existing grantees, there's an openness that we have to just hearing how it's going. What are the adjustments that might need to be made by the impacts of what's happening around us? So just continue to keep those lines of communication open with your funders. That's all.
Great, thank you. The next area is AI. And Sean and Gabby, I have you down for that.
Okay.
If any of the other panelists want to jump in, please do. So, Sean, what are your policies about AI and applications? And what do you need from grant writers who are using AI?
We don't have a policy on AI, so yeah. I think in terms of what we need, or what I would like to see from grant writers that are using AI, is that you're using it efficiently or correctly. Staying away from the go-to make this better, right? Plugging that into ChatGPTs, having your application written out and just saying make this better, but giving it context, different prompts and different uses for AI is what I would like to see, and also not just copy and pasting the response, the auto-generated response. Other than the famous M dashes being in the answers, just different syntaxes that is pretty standard with a lot of AI. I don't see it as a crime for using AI. Acknowledging that someone's using AI, I think that's good. You're using a tool, but just using it more effectively than the standard person goes a long way.
Thank you. Gabby, do you have anything to add?
I work in banking. AI is terrible. What I would say is very similar to what Sean said. There is no crime with AI. I have not seen it as prevalently as I know will probably come in the not so distant future, but very much so. Just do that second read through of making sure hit enter is not in parentheses at the end, or add punctuation. I've definitely had those come up. So those to me, I'm a little giggle, but at the same time, I'm like, come on. But those are the, it's just like having that second set of eyes. Like Sean mentioned, it's not a crime. It is a tool to be used, but to use it properly. And I think that it is very hard in some cases to get the true emotion or depiction of a project or what you're looking for us to support when it's an auto-generated response. And I think that, again, it's not a crime. Use it, utilize it, but also keep the human side into it as much as possible too.
Thank you. Does anybody have anything to add about AI? I guess one of the things we're wondering is, are any of you using AI?
Never. I don't even know how to spell.
Great. Thank you. So we have 3 minutes, and we could ask you to say, do you have any last words, anything you want this audience to know? Should we go with that one? Or, anything you want to talk about? So, anybody have anything that's burning that they'd like to convey?
I want to let you guys know, it's on the website, but in case you haven't looked at it yet, what our cycles are for that LOI. We have 2 cycles, and the first one, basically the way it works is the board will look at President Vinnie, who will look at all the LOIs that's submitted in October, bring the recommendation list to the board about October. We'll discuss them and go through them and then decide who will be invited, which proposals will be invited to submit an application. That date would be December 15th. In the summer cycle, it's June 15th. And then once the proposal's in, the beginning of the year in January, the board will go through them and then decide who would be moved on to the next stage, which is the 1-hour virtual interview. And that's really just an opportunity to get to know people, to understand who the organization is, what the proposal is, and ask any questions that we had based on the proposal. And we'll always try to give those questions to the organization prior to that virtual meeting so that they know what we were kind of not sure about or interested in finding more about. And then in the spring, we'll make decisions probably March, and for the summer one, it's September. So I just want to let you know what the cycle was.
Thank you.
We have 6 cycles, so if you are late, it's only 2 more months. So everyone has thought it's rolling, so it kind of is. Once we have the website, it'll be a little more defined. If you miss a deadline, it'll just push you to the next one. It's not a rejection. It's just see you in 2 months kind of thing. I would just say, be open and honest. Reach out, have that conversation. I know there's some organizations that don't encourage that. Again, Carvel's in the community in the sense of, we have nothing to do with the company anymore. But that's who we're funding. We're funding our neighbors and in our communities where we live and volunteer and participate. So reach out. There were 5 board members, as I said, who were very, very involved. They do a champion kind of situation like you were mentioning, Gabrielle, and we all do want to build those relationships, so.
Thank you. So we're at 10 o'clock, which is audience time, unless you have something you really feel like you gotta say. Okay, then it's time to open up to questions from the audience. I want to say that I see that there are people in the back, and there are some seats open up here if you want to come up. You're welcome to. So, I saw a hand raised, so please shout your question.
Okay. Hi, sorry, I'm not going to make it up front.
No problem.
I'm Kathy O'Callahan from Hearts and Homes for Refugees. And I ask this of funders in panels like this because I asked it early on years ago, and the answers are changing. So I think there's a growth or a recognition that this is an issue. So I know funders are managing many requests, and we all understand as organizations that not all proposals can be supported, but from the nonprofit side, we have to plan, we have to manage, and financially it's good to know whether an application will not be considered. So my question is, if we don't receive acknowledgement of receipt or response after submission, and this doesn't happen often, but could you speak to what reasonable expectations an applicant can have around communications? Application received, application being considered, application denied. Otherwise, it goes into a black hole. And I can just tell you that's not the usual process, so kudos to funders. Most are very receptive. And then what do we do? Do we keep following up? Do we become obnoxious? Do we just let it go and assume what we are being told in a very quiet way?
Okay, so if I'm understanding correctly, the question is about communication from funders once an application is received. What's your typical process if you don't typically acknowledge receipt or you're you have a portal that doesn't do that somehow. What would you recommend an organization do to follow up? Should they keep hammering, or what do they do if they don't know what's going on?
I'm happy to speak, obviously, for M&T. So with our online portal, you aren't able to submit without it giving you this has been received, all is green lighted for the submission, and then that immediately goes into our online system. So otherwise there's a lot of red, angry boxes that you have to fill out. So it won't let you move forward without that happening. What we have right on our website, and any conversations I have, is generally for an organization, dependent on what your time cycle is dependent on when you should apply. So we meet in all of my regions, we meet on a monthly cadence. So it's not 2 cycles or anything. We meet all 12 months. So dependent on, we always kind of express to try to fill out the application at least 6 to 8 weeks ahead of time, based on what your time schedule is. From that, you will show under consideration, and then once it goes to to my charitable committees that I oversee, and we go through, and whatever those decisions, approvals, or declines, those happen pretty much right after the meeting happens. So if it, for whatever reason, is a decline, you'll receive a decline email almost immediately after that meeting, or you'll receive the approval and then expectation of when funds would be sent. So never obnoxious by any means, but what I would say is it really does come down to what your time frame is of submission and forward. But anything beyond that, it's yes, resubmit, or if you did get that decline, I'm CC'd on every single one of those emails. Reach out to myself, or again, if you have that internal sponsor, to say, like, hey, can we sit down and really talk through this? Like, we want to get this over the finish line. We want to see this hopefully be something that you guys eventually approve if you have declined it. And let's walk through it together. That's our main thing.
Thank you. And does anybody here have a process that's not automated, and any recommendations with regard to acknowledgement and follow-up? Kara.
Nothing is automated. We have email now.
You should have gotten a shirt made.
However, coming soon will be the website and a very automated process. And in fact, I just wrote the text for all the emails that will be automated. However, back to the relationship, our board members want to send the letter, they want to write the letter, they want to sign the checks. And apologies for anybody who's received a check that wasn't signed. Anyhow, part of the reason I was hired was to do that. And it's understood that things do fall through the cracks. We apologize for that. I'm the only staff person, and the 5 board members, they don't come into the office. So it's me. I'm trying to do that, to find those pieces of paper and the emails that may have gone to spam or gone to the old email address, etc. But Kathy, to answer your question, yes, call me back, email me,
You guys have been great.
knock on my door. We live a block from each other. So yeah, I have nobody else can ring my doorbell though. Follow up. It's human error on my part that I didn't get back to you at this point, and I'm still, going through a lot. So thank you again for your patience. And we're working on it. If you see something that isn't working, please let me know. We'll make those changes down the road. But yeah, communication.
Okay. Anybody else, or should we move on?
Yeah, just very quickly, the New York Community Trust, we just changed our process of accepting proposals about 1.5 years ago, so we now also have a portal. I think the
the portal provides confirmation of receipt, I'm not entirely sure, but we do have now a rolling, it does, okay, thanks, great. We do have a rolling competitive grants process now, so if you submit an application at any point in time, we will receive it and consider it in one of our three rounds throughout the year, March, November, June, all of the dates by which you would have to submit for each of those rounds are available on the website, but it's like we accept proposals like 6 months in advance of the decision that's being made, and that's because the proposals go through extensive internal review. If you haven't heard from us within that 6-month period, please reach out. We will absolutely respond, but reach out via email, and we're happy to provide you a little bit of sense as to what's happening behind the scenes.
Thank you. Any more questions? Yes.
Hi, my name is Cheryl Slavin. I'm the Director of Institutional Giving at Hebrew Union College. I wanted to kind of engage more in conversation a little bit more about the question of renewals becoming rote and same thing every year. I think Gabby spoke a lot about that, and maybe Joanne as well. So from our perspective, there are certain program areas or need for us as a school that doesn't change every year. We need funding every year but for us it's scholarship money. And we have some funders who give us scholarship money every single year. And sometimes in the last couple of years, one of our funders said, well, is there anything else we can fund prior to giving scholarship money? We want to do something new and exciting and sexy. They don't say sexy, but we know that's what they mean. But what is your response to, the bottom line is there are certain things that an organization may need consistent support for and have, and look to you to provide that. I know it's fun and wonderful to do new and transformative and impactful work, but what about the kind of ongoing need for consistency?
Do you mind if I just repeat the question? So for everyone, the question is, if you have programs that are ongoing and unvarying, they never change, the need is always there, and you have funders who tend to keep funding those things, how do you as funders approach this in terms of that ongoing need and any desire you may have for a new adventure?
Sure. Not to say that, we can't fund the same thing annually. We don't want it to be that you feel as though that is the only thing that you can apply for. I think that's the easier way to say it. Scholarships are always going to be something that are necessary and needed. We do a lot of work with different universities and colleges, and it could be anything from that scholarship is then kind of spearheaded into, is this somebody, let's say, going into healthcare field, or is this somebody that is the child of a veteran or a veteran themselves, or just looking at those like different opportunities that might be that even more niche need. In some cases, I think some of the other things that we've come up with, it again has been things that have come to us from the universities and organizations or colleges to say, we're looking to do an on-campus food pantry and have that be something that's available to students because we're seeing an overwhelming need of those, that are, not on campus living, don't have a meal plan, but also, don't want to publicly, outwardly say, I unfortunately don't have the funds or ability to, to feed myself while on campus or, going from one place to the other. But scholarships, again, are things that we wholeheartly understand are things that are going to be necessary forever. So it's not to say that it's something that we wouldn't do. I think we look to the organizations to tell us if you're seeing an overwhelming need of something else that's bubbling up from the student population.
Anybody else?
I would say yes, continue to apply for the college scholarship from us, but don't submit the same application. Submit, over the last 5, 10, whatever, the needs have changed and the number of students have changed, needing financial aid, scholarships, whatever. And just talk about the trend that you're living through, or the environment you're living in, and how this 50,000 will impact 5 kids, or 1, because that's only half a tuition, as we know. Or that you want to include things like books and the meal plan and things like that, because sometimes it's just tuition that was covered, and that's the least of the costs.
Okay, so we have time for one last question, one quick question. Go ahead.
Okay, great, thank you very much. I'm Cheryl Brannon. I'm founder of Sister to Sister International, and I know many of you on the panel. I'm wondering if you might comment on the target audience that we as nonprofit organizations service. For example, Sister to Sister International, our target audience are Black women, girls, and brown families as well, Black and brown families, let's put it that way. However, when we look at the current climate that we're operating in, and we make applications to various boards, such as yourself, or foundations, we know that there's a whole different set of vernacular now when we look at what's going on in Washington. So, I mean, instead of Black and brown girls and Black and brown families, it's almost like, well, now we want to talk about green girls and green families. You know, so my point is, based on the current climate in Washington, are you still looking for the real deal, the real target audiences, the people we really want to impact, or do we have to get into this estranged vernacular now to make our applications worthy and certainly considerate?
So the question is, if I'm understanding, if we're serving people who we might previously have called underserved, Black, brown, women, and all the words that are on the naughty list now, can we still use those words, or how would you like us to talk about these things?
I mean, it is a very loaded question. What I can say for M&T is that on our website, on our application, we had to remove a lot of those words just as a generalization for, you know, what Washington has asked, and as a publicly traded company and all that fun stuff. What I will say is that we always are going to want to see the breakdown of who we're supporting. We're going to want to see who the populations are, what the communities are, what the areas of need are going to be, because at the end of the day, we have to report those out. We have to report those out for our Community Reinvestment Act. We have to report those out for any Freddie Mac, Fannie Mae, any of those things that we are required to report out on. We need to see that, but at the end of the day, we also want to make sure that we are funding and making those funds available to our communities that we live, work, and play in. So that is not, it's not something from a targeted area of need that we will go away with. What we have done is just softened the language in our applications, but we are always going to want to see who it is at the end of the day that we are supporting, and what that support is, because we know it is not a universal need across all platforms.
Gabby, you are a fantastic diplomat, and that was a real answer. No, it's a tough question.
It's not easy. It is not an easy question and it's not an easy world, and I won't even pretend to. I give so much respect to the people in the room that are on the nonprofit side and are dealing in these so uncertain times of your funding and everything else, because I can't even imagine how you look at the news every single day and you're like, and here's another thing, and here's another thing. So my hat off to all of you completely, because I know what we deal with on our side of things is not even a third of what all of you are dealing with on the not-for-profit side.
Thank you you. Anybody else have a comment?
A little.
Kara?
I get the luxury of being angry. You don't. You have to do the work. And you can vent to me. I mean that. And Cheryl, I don't want you writing one proposal for somebody and using one vernacular or words or whatever, and then rewriting it for me. You write you and send it to me. And this is where the testimonials and the pictures and the stories show me who you're, and as Gabrielle was saying, write it in. So, you're not allowed to speak for anybody else anymore, so I'm gonna say thank you for the work you're doing, and if I can make your lives easier, let me know.
We are a little over time. I do want to say, if you feel like you want to say something about this, please do, and then we'll end. Do you have something, or?
I was actually just gonna ask, just yesterday, we were actually on a call with our consultants about this topic, and long story short, they advise that we still can. It's up to us as a hospital to choose who we fund and what we fund. Some of the guidance that they provide is that organizations update the language on their website to be more inclusive. We've thought about we offer technical assistance opportunities, and one of the things we thought of having was having our consultants come and host a webinar or a workshop on this very topic. So we'll hopefully have something in the near future to address this, but that is something that we have been talking about.
Just quickly add, we have not updated any language on the website of the New York Community Trust. Continue to submit proposals as you have. We understand that nonprofits are engaged in a strategic storytelling exercise, and we're trying to support nonprofits and our recent grantees in that work, but continue to submit what you have in the past.
So we want to say thank you from our hearts for your frankness and for sharing with us, and we want to give you flowers. All of you. So please feel free to mingle, come and actually meet the funders, and thank you all.